Hey, what's up, everybody? Noble Comics here. This one's a little long overdue. Sorry, let me make sure this is set up right. Yeah, a little long overdue. Talking about Narwhal'S Interactivity Essay, which I read it, then I sat on it for a little bit, I reread it. I've been going through it. I wanted to make sure I had all my thoughts pretty solid before I talked about it. Uh, so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about my search for a mentor, which I talked about on Twitter for a little bit. Make sure I get this lighting right. Yeah, okay. So those are the two main topics. But first, anybody wondering about the comic book Cardinal Cult and Punishment, I have sent the print file off to the printer. I hit an initial snag with it. I think it's resolved. I'm waiting for the printer to send me the what's it called? Waiting for them to send me the proof copies. And once those are approved, we'll get the books printed. I'm hoping that that'll happen within the next week or so. Originally, in my last update, I think I said I wanted to get the books out by the end of October now. That'll probably not be the case. It might stretch over into November. Yeah. So that's why I originally had this set out till January to get all this stuff done because I knew I'd hit some snags having this be my first time doing this. But it's all going along pretty well. But on to the interactivity essay. If you guys don't know what that is, Narwhal, who's, great writer, great comic creator, has been talking about interactivity a whole lot lately in stories, talking about how to communicate better with the audience as a writer, have the audience keep them guessing, uh, have them be more involved in the story, give them goosebumps, all that stuff. And he wrote this like 81-page essay about it, which if you want to access that essay, it is available from the link in the description. So you guys can check that out. I recommend it. I want to kind of give my thoughts over that today. So, just broad thoughts about it. Thought it was very good. Like I said, I read it more than once. Um, I think that it covers a whole lot of ground, and I think that if you are struggling with writing, you don't really. It's kind of this is the kind of situation I was in. Is like I know what a good story is and a bad story is. I know I can tell. Okay, that was a good story. And that was a bad story, and I can write and I can pretty much tell. Okay, I think this is good, but maybe I don't exactly know why. I don't exactly know. I can't really explain it other than just broad terms. I think this story will help out a lot with that. It kind of nails down exactly what you're feeling, what the audience is feeling, what you want them to feel, how all that ties together to make it a good story. It goes over specifically, beginning of the story, middle of the story, end of the story. He deconstructs a lot of scenes and why they work, why they're interactive, what they're doing wrong or what they're doing right. And he goes over a lot of ideas, and some of them, as he kind of mentions, are kind of contrary to what the main narrative is on these. And so I want to talk about a little bit of those. Let me see, I have it. That's it pulled up here. So one of the ideas he talks about is predictability in stories, and he says that it's kind of paradoxical, it's kind of contradictory because that light is really coming in strong, huh? Because we want our stories to be predictable to a degree, right? Like I just last night watched Hereditary horror movie, really really good. I liked it a lot. And as I was watching it, this essay kept coming to mind is okay, they're setting up this scene, they're setting it up like this, they're using X, Y, and Z. They're one of the main things he talks about is privileged information. What information do you have as the watcher or the reader that other characters don't have? And that's usually like lying. It's some we see some guy doing like, cheating on this guy's wife. The guy doesn't know, but we know that he did it and we know that he doesn't know. And so it plays in a lot like that. And so I'm watching Hereditary And the whole time, my mind's like, okay, what's going to happen next? Is this going to happen? Okay, she's walking into a room. Is she going to see this or is she going to see that? So the whole time you're guessing at what might happen. And it's kind of a fine line. You want it to be vague enough to where it's not like, okay, I've seen the first 5 minutes. I know how this entire story goes. But you don't want it to be so vague that it's like, I literally have no idea what's going on. So it's a fine line between having it make sense and then having it be like not just drab and predictable. Um, but the dichotomy that he showed was predictability between stories broadly and characters. And he said there was this paradox, and I think he said like take Hereditary. You want the story to be to a degree unpredictable so that it's not boring. But then he said, take a character like Hank Hill, King of the Hill. The whole reason you like Hank is because he is so predictable. You know exactly how he's going to react when something happens. And that's kind of you see something happen and you're thinking, oh my gosh, whenever Hank sees this, he's going to freak out. And then Hank sees it and he freaks out, and that's funny. That may have something to do with comedy, but I think it's not really contradictory, in my opinion. The story and character thing, as far as predictability goes, because I think those are just two completely different areas. The way I thought of it that made sense to me is like if there's like a river going into some fog, you don't really know where it's going. That's your story. That's the adventure. You're going into the unknown. You don't really know where you're going, but that's it. You can probably guess it's going to bring you to a few different places, but that's where you're headed. That's the story. You want that to be, to a degree, unpredictable so that it is an adventure. But your boat, you don't really want to be guessing, okay, is it going to sink or is it going to float? You really want your boat to be really sturdy. You want to know everything about it. You want to know exactly how it's going to react. And I think that's your character. So your character should be predictable. Your story should not. And that's what he touched on. But I don't think that those two are just twined to just predictability. I think that they're pretty unique. Like Captain America, the whole reason so many people hated that 2017 Hydra Cap storyline is because that was completely unpredictable for the character of Captain America. He would not act like that. That's inconsistent with his character, and that's why it sucked. So I think that's kind of it. I think like the boat in the river is kind of. I think that makes sense to me of how you want to picture your character and your story. So that was my thought on that. That was probably like the only point of the story where I raised an eyebrow and I was said, I don't really know about that 100%. The rest of it, I agreed with pretty well, and most of it's like you learn it for the first time, so you really got to think about it and and put some thought into it before you can really say I agree or I disagree. But it definitely gave you a lot to think about, and it gave me a lot of insight in how to structure my stories. Because after reading it and having that on my mind, so Cardinal Book 4, which I've written up to Book 5, and I kind of realized as I was doing it, probably not a good idea to do all this writing, like, panel by panel, because I'm going to have to go back once I'm a better writer and fix it. And that's kind of what happened with Book 4, is I knew I was going to have to rewrite it, and I knew I was going to have to make some changes just structurally to it. But I went back and I completely restructured it and shifted it around. And this really helped me kind of, I think, made it a whole lot better, saying, okay, here I'm going to set up these scenes. I want you to set up the subtext, set up these characters. I want to have the story progress. Like you said, you don't just want a linear story. You want an exponentially growing story so that you can feel the acceleration as the story goes on. Which, again, that's something like, I did engineering for 3 years in school. So the topic of acceleration, it made sense to me, but retooling that to storytelling I thought was pretty neat. And think that'll help me out a lot. And one thing he does in the book, right, the novel, the essay, whatever you want to call it, is that helps a lot is reverse engineering a few cool scenes where we have a scene and it may seem boring, but then he's like, no, this scene is really secretly awesome. And here's why. And then you reverse engineer from that point all the way back to everything that's intertwined with this interaction. And I think in one of his live streams, he gave a good example, which was like, girl sits next to guy in class and they're lab partners. Extremely boring scene. But then if you pull back and you see the setup of that, it's okay, guy is a nerd, but he's really good at science, whatever, in this lab. Girl secretly has a crush on guy, but girl is also dating the high school football guy. High school football guy hates the nerd. She's sitting next to him. Now he's thinking, awesome, this cute girl sitting next to me, but also I'm dead because now this jock is going to kill me. So there's a lot that can be tied into just a simple scene that makes you think, there's a lot more going on. It's a lot more interactive and it's a lot more interesting. So it can really change the way that you look at stories. And like I said, watching this movie, this what I was thinking about the whole time is how well they were doing all this stuff and how it really gets you involved in the story. What else do I got on here? I made a few notes. Talk about privileged information, uh, what you have that nobody else has, or maybe you have all the information like the bird's eye view, or like the God eye view, where you see every single conversation, but none of them know that they've had these conversations. So you know more than anybody, and you're just waiting for all of it to come crashing together. It's that anticipation that okay, this person's lying to this person, and this person's cheating on this person, and all this is going to come together, and it's all going to be a big crash. And that kind of made me think too. Is I like superhero stories. For me, it's like the costumes, it's the action, it's all that stuff. But really, that's not what it's about. That's not why you get hooked, even though you might think it's why you get hooked. It's really just about that stuff like that. People having a conversation. What do they know? What do they not know? And you're sitting there thinking like, oh man, if he only, oh man, this is so, oh, and he just got back from having an affair with that guy's wife. And now they're talking like they're friends. It's it's the stuff like that. Yeah, what do you know that they don't know? Or you could do it too. What do they know that you don't know? Kind of like in horror movies, they do that where the monster may be off screen the whole time. All the individual people who die get to see the monster, but you never do. So they have this information that you don't, and it's like a bunch of anticipation of what is this thing? When am I going to get to see it? So touched on that. One part of the story, the essay that he touched on that I've thought a lot about more than anything else, and I still don't understand it. It's just going to be one of those things for me, I think, that I'm just never going to really understand. Well, at least probably not for a while. And that's characters versus set pieces. Now, he makes a point, and from this point, I'm with you 100%. He says, when we talk about stories we like, you never really remember the story as much as you remember the characters. 100%. We think of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Well, there are strong, it's fighting Fire Lord or whatever, but you remember Iroh and Zuko and Aang and all those people. It's the characters that stand out. Same thing, Toy Story, characters that stand out. Uh, Dark Knight, Joker, and Batman. Everybody only talks about the Joker. What is even the storyline? Who knows? People only talk about the performance and the characters because that's what steals the show. But then he takes it a step further and he says, no, it's not really about the characters. It's really about the set pieces. And that's where I start to get a little fuzzy. Because even the concept of a set piece, it's like I understand it, but I don't know if I understand it in the way that he's using it. Because it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if I get a concept that's a difficult concept, and I do not understand it at all. That's probably a good sign that I need to keep studying. But on the flip, if I get a concept that's a difficult concept and I understand it immediately, that's probably also a sign that you don't really understand it. You need to do more studying. So if he says, yes, set pieces are important, and I go, oh, yeah, I know what a set piece is. Yeah. It's like, okay, I'm probably missing something in what he's saying. So it's like, I don't know, take Spirited Away. I think would probably be a good example of that if I'm understanding it right. Spirited Away, great Studio Ghibli film. The biggest set piece instantly that comes to mind is, of course, the bathhouse scene with that ghost and they're pulling all the stuff out of his stomach. You don't really remember from that movie the girl. I mean, you might be like, oh, yeah, that girl who freaked out. You'll probably remember the spider guy. You'll probably remember the dude who turns into that big old dragon and that freaky mom lady. You know, all industry terms, by the way, for these people. Um, but what you really remember is, I guess, probably that dragon being attacked in the sky by all the like little paper birds, and you remember the bathhouse scene. Those are the two big set pieces that stick in your mind, and it's like I feel like you can't have a good set piece without good characters as a foundation. But but then you could say, can you really have good characters without a set piece to test these characters? And I guess put their feet to the fire a little bit. So that's something. If you guys read the essay, let me know if it makes more sense to you and if you can explain it better than me. The set piece versus character thing. Been thinking about it a lot. It's a weird concept to think about because it's one of those things where you think, at least I do, I say you, I think in terms typically character and story. What's the story? The hero's journey, whatever it is. Who are the characters? The characters go on and they finish the story. But maybe that is not how you should be thinking. Maybe you should be thinking broadly, generally, what's the story? And then, okay, what are my set pieces? What are the big building block movements between Act 1, Act 2, Act 3? Not just boring nonsense. And something just came to mind. So if you don't know, I'm also writing. I kind of took a break to do more comic stuff as soon as the campaign started worrying about comics more. But I'm writing a fantasy novel. It's on, what is that called? I want to say WordPress, maybe like the Wattpad, something like that. One of those where you post your writings. It's like the orange icon. If I find it, I'll relink it in the description. And I posted the first two chapters of it, and I think it's really good. But one problem that I kind of keep finding is like I really don't want to have boring scenes of people just riding from one location to another and talking. Well, you can put an interactive spin on that to make it interesting. It's like really, there's got to be a better way to explain characters, what they know, what they're doing, where they're going, and get them to one location faster. And I think the solution for that may be the set piece. Every set piece puts them in a certain struggle. From that struggle, they can reveal what they know or show what they can do. And at the end of it, they just went on this. And by the end of it, they can get where they're going. They don't just have to ride a horse the whole time. So think about that as I keep writing. Kind of a sub idea I just had there. Cool. Okay. And one thing, now this is something I've thought about for a while. It's an idea I've had in my mind, and up until I read this, I didn't know. It's like yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about, and you just put it into words. And that is what I call it the movie or the story where nothing happens, and those are always the best or considered the best stories. Nothing happens. And what I mean by that is take a movie like Good Times. Good Time. Yeah. With Robert Pattinson. Great movie. It's awesome. Nothing happens in that movie. And what I mean by that is like if you take that story out of the giant broad world universe and then you have this story. If this story ceases to exist, the universe is completely unchanged. There's of course tiny changes, but for the most part, unchanged. It is a blink in the eye of the universe and nothing else happens. Even like the city is pretty much unchanged. Nothing happens in the movie. And really what that is, that whole nothing's happening, that's really just everything going wrong. And it's like you have a plan. And typically, you have this movie, you have this plan happens, okay, plan fails, here's how we do it, it works, and then we just go on and on and on and on to one problem after another after the plan. Whatever, got some cop chase, you got something, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually it all crashes. This movie doesn't really do that. It's just like, okay, let me go get my brother out of the hospital. Okay, I got the wrong guy. Okay, let's go back and we'll get him out. We'll get some money. Okay, then this got screwed up. Okay, then let's try this, and this got screwed up, and just one thing goes wrong after another. By the end of it, all of their goals, what I would say the actual story, none of it actually happens, and it's you say extremely interactive, but nothing happens in the end in the broad scope of things. I think One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest does the same thing. It's a little hospital in the middle of nowhere, who knows? And everything that goes on there, if it never happened, pretty much basically the same. In fact, after all this crazy stuff happens, at the end of the movie, when Jack Nicholas is like comatose, Nurse Ratchet has the neck brace on, but she's just going back to doing her regular thing. In a couple weeks from then, all of it would be forgotten. Everything's back to normal. Nothing happened. Just a bunch of stuff happened. It all went wrong. None of it had any lasting impact on the world or the story as a whole. So I find those to be interesting, but again, they're always considered really great movies. And it's like, I get it. Or like 2 months ago, I got it. I was like, okay, I get it. It's because things keep going wrong. I guess you could say probably like subvert your expectations. But after reading this essay, it's like, okay, I get it. It's because those stories are interactive. It's because you as the audience, it's it's like I don't know, it's really interactive. You get goosebumps. Watching this whole thing, and a lot of it relies on a lot of interpersonal, a lot of psychological stuff. What do you know? What do you not know? What are they doing? What are they not doing? What are they scheming behind the scenes? What are their ulterior motives? Who's going to betray who? That kind of stuff. I think that's where it comes from a lot. A lot of movies where nothing happens, but really a lot of it, I think, might just be psychological, interactive, you could say. And they're always good. So I know there's kind of like a lot of scattered thoughts about the essay, covering a handful of topics. Again, it's 81 pages, I want to say. Uh, Goes over a lot, really goes in depth into the topic. And if you are a writer, you want to get better, you maybe know these concepts, or it's one of those things where it's like, I felt this, but now you've put it into words. I'd check out the whole essay. Again, it takes you from beginning of the story, into the story, middle, specific scenes, specific movies, why it works, why it doesn't. It really walks you through it, and I think at the end of it, once you've read it, you've digested it, think it will make you a better writer, and you can really look at other stories and you can see why they work, why they don't work, and how you can make your own stories work. So check it out. Like I said, link is in the description for that. Next, so I want to talk about mentors. Let me see here. Looking at my Twitter. So let me share my screen as soon as I figure out. Share screen. Cool. Okay. So let me go. Yeah. New to streaming, folks. I'm still trying to figure all this stuff out. So, tweeted the other day that I need a comic book mentor or something, perhaps a prophetic meeting with a mysterious stranger who can tell me just exactly what I need to be doing in my life. And what this tweet really stemmed from is, I'm in college right now. This is what should have been my senior year. I was doing engineering for about 3 years before I realized I really didn't like engineering. I really didn't like the engineering people at this college. So I switched over this semester as my first semester in business economics. And I'll hopefully graduate like a year late, but that's okay, whatever. So I switched over to this new field, 21, and it's like there's just so much stuff that I can be doing right now. I don't know what to do. Basically, it comes down to a few different key uh, solutions. So I got a job right now that I like. I know my boss likes me, and I could probably, after I graduate, just work there for, however long I needed to. But I probably wouldn't get paid a ton. It'd probably be enough for me. Probably wouldn't get paid a ton. And two, it's not where I want to live. It's about an hour and a half away from where I want to live. So that's an issue. But it would give me plenty of time to do comic books on the side. So comic books, relatively easy because it's very relaxed, pretty relaxed. And my boss likes me. Far away, don't get paid a ton. The second would be I graduate with this economics degree. I go get some corporate job or, just some regular 9 to 5. Probably, well, that's the setup, 9 to 5. Probably make a lot of money, more money, I should say. Probably have less time for comics. Comics may just eventually fall to the wayside and die as far as what I want to do, which I really don't want that to happen. But make more money, probably could get a job basically anywhere. Economics is pretty broad. Probably be pretty easy. So that's again more money, less time. Comics suffer. Which if I was a regular person, it's probably what I'd do. But I really want to make comics. Then I guess there's kind of two more options. One would be the job I have now is a part of a wider field, which I enjoy. I could get a job in that wider field, so I've got connections, I know people, I could do that. It seems like a pretty good job. I know someone who has that exact job, known them for a long time, they seem to enjoy it. So you get a job there, pretty relaxed, make pretty decent money, and I probably have pretty much my choice where I wanted to live. So I think I could live where I want to, still do this job. Two, or I guess on the flip side, probably gonna be harder to get, probably gonna have less time for comics, but more time than I think if I got just some corporate job with my degree. So right now that one's 3 to 2. That's kind of the best one so far. Final solution, and that'd just be some like a sales job. Final solution would be basically to hell with my degree, going back to where I want to live, and I would go be a teacher at the school where I went to high school. So that's what I never really wanted to be a teacher. I think it's something to be good at. And if I was going to teach anywhere, that's the only place I'd want to teach is back at my high school. So could be a teacher. Pays probably not that great, but you got a lot of spare time. It's in my hometown. Very relaxed. I mean, come on. It's a tiny school, very relaxed. The downside would be basically wasted time getting this degree, and I'm a high school teacher. May not be a bad idea. Get summers off, easily have a side hobby. Again, you probably wouldn't make a ton of money, but that's not what I want to. It's not what I want to retire doing. I want to retire making comics. So hopefully, it'd only be a short term thing, anyways. I think the main thing would be like, do I really want to go be a high school teacher? And I think like that now, but when I think about my high school teachers, it's like I'm really glad that they were my teachers and I had all these cool, actually smart people teaching high school. Helped out a lot. I feel like if I could kind of contribute that, that'd be nice. So that was so that was a really long setup to get to what this Twitter conversation was about. So I just said, yeah, I needed a prophet to, I need a mentor, which I really do need a comic book mentor. Just aside from this whole figure out what I want to do. I'm young. I don't really know what I'm doing other than what other people are doing. Like I know how to contact a printer and make a print file. I know how to pay an artist and all that stuff. I think it would really help to have like a old comic book pro take me under his wing and kind of slap me into shape a little bit so I don't have to learn all this stuff on my own. They can just teach me and I can jump up a few levels really quickly. It'd be nice to have a mentor. So Sir Jean-Luc Connery uh, was the first to offer his services, and they're in here somewhere. There's a couple of them that he said. So first thing he said, he gave two replies here. The first one was, where the heck is this thing? How is this not here with all the others? Is it back? Yeah. Okay, so these were his two. I just pointed at my computer screen as if you could see me doing that. So he said, about the kind of job I wanted, he said, get the one that pays the most and takes the least time. If it's digging ditches, then take it. And then he said, it's the apocalypse, and I don't know if he means like the global apocalypse or the comic apocalypse or both. He says, and spend all your extra time making comics, which that's really solid advice. And the least time that pays the most, that's kind of an equation I'd have to work out. And I feel like it would either be at the teaching job or the sales job in this field that I was talking about, which that one would definitely take up more time, but also pay me, probably double, triple what being a teacher would. So does it take double or triple more time? Maybe. So that'd be something I'd have to work out mathematically, and then spend my time creating extra time creating comics. So it's like, okay, that's good advice. But then he came and he said, "Oh, if you're extremely talented, though, then just crash at somebody's place and only make comics." Which it's like, I appreciate the insight, But the whole whole thing was like, do I do this or that? And his solution was, oh, you can do this or that. It's like, well, yeah, now I'm back at square one. So yeah, I appreciate the insight. And I think that this year is probably, I don't think that I am like, what do they call it? Like a, what do they say? It's like a genius, but unrecognized genius, you know? Not yet, anyways. Not a genius yet. But I think this is really the best solution is just find a job that doesn't take much time and pays you a lot, make comics on the side. Just got to figure out what that means to me. And then that umbrella guy, Tug, replied, and, you know, grow a following, make a book, buy a platinum grill, fund a cult, become a comic god. And, the first two obviously are legit, and the other ones are jokes. But I think there's some legit wisdom in all of it. Grow a following. I have a following. It's a very small following, so I probably need a bigger one. I've already made a book, or I should say, in the process of making a book. A platinum grill. The only type of grill I need is one for like some burgers, some steak. So I'll get on that one. Fund a cult. I could probably do that, and again, that's like jokingly, but I feel like that's kind of what a ton of these CG guys do. And I'm not the guy out here saying, "Oh, comic street's a cult," but it's like I feel like that's saying, become a personality that people will pay to see. Like Ethan Van Sciver, people pay just to have him read their super chats and all that stuff because he's a personality. People like him, I like him, and then become a comic god, which that's of course long term. And I probably need some definitional terms on that one because you know the comic gods, in my opinion, is like Stanley, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. I'd probably say Frank Miller. And then like below that, maybe you got Alan Moore. You've got, you know, I'd put like Jim Lee. I'd put Dale Keown. I'd put Rob Liefeld, Todd McFarlane, some of those key image guys. You could probably throw in like Ramita Senior. Could probably throw in Kubert as as you're kind of making the scale of gods to wherever we're at now. So right now I'm like a little comic peasant, but I'll hopefully work my way up eventually. And oh, that was a tweet I liked. And I think that was pretty much the two like legit pieces of advice, other than like somebody said here, if you want to be a comic writer, just become a lawyer. So you can sue anybody that says mean stuff to you. And I'm all for that. You know, this old economics degree of mine, I'm taking some business law. So I'm sure I could whip out the lawyer skills on some guys. You called me a mean name, I'll see you in court. Make a lot of money that way too. Put that on the I'll put all the stuff going on the vision board. I'm gonna make right now. I'm just staring at a blank wall, but just imagine that I have a vision board with all this advice that I'm gonna follow, and it's all gonna work out eventually. So, that was that. Sort of my beginning life crisis of not knowing what to do. So I know that's kind of like pretty typical for people my age, not really know what's going on because it's like there's just so much you can do, and then like, and I know it's easy to get caught up in like once you pick one thing, that's what you're stuck with forever, and I know that's not the case. It just kind of feels that way sometimes. But if I could do it all over again in my old age and wisdom, would not have gone to college. Probably would have just made comics. Though, to be fair, I only got involved with Comicsgate and really only got to make my comic today because I went to college. I got a job at this place, at this job. I met a guy who was into Comicsgate and told me about it. So funny how things work like that. If I'd have gone to a different college that I actually liked and didn't despise with my friends, probably would not be making a comic right now. That dream may be kind of being dragged behind. So, you take the good with the bad, I guess. Uh, but yeah, college kind of sucks. I think it's kind of a scam. Comic books is where it's at. And so hopefully I can. My goal, if you want to really know my long term kind of goals, so my plan was to put out one book a year. That may equate to one campaign a year and one physical book being shipped every year and a half because of how long the books are, which is typically 84 to 102 pages. It's kind of the where I like to stay in between. Maybe even a little less than 100, maybe like 84 to 92, 96 pages. And so with the artist I have, that takes a little over a year to make each book. The colorist can usually keep pace pretty well. So let's say it takes 14 months to complete a book. You run the campaign for 2 months. If everything set up and print file and all that stuff, that's still another few months before you get the book. And I like to have the book, if not complete, pretty much complete by the time I launch the campaign. I think book two, depending on when we get started, I kind of want to launch the campaign around this time of the year, if not a little earlier, but around this time of the year. And then hopefully this time of the year next year. So then hopefully beginning of the year next year, you get your books. After you get your books at the beginning of the year next year, book three campaign comes out, and it kind of can flow like that. So you have campaign every year, book every year and a half to every other year, depending on how it overlaps. But as far as a career, my goal is by book three, I want to break even. And hopefully by book four, I'm actually making money, even if it's a little bit of money. Because book one, I lost money, but that's no shock. I knew that going in. Book two, I expect I'll probably lose money. Uh, book three, hoping to break even or at least get close, and then book four, hopefully turn a profit. And I've had people ask me, why didn't you just make it a short book why didn't you just, make some beginner book, baby's first comic book? And it's two reasons. One is I have a job, kind of technically like full time, but I don't always work full time. So I could afford to pay a guy and kind of eat the loss to make this book. But two, it's like if I'm going to spend a year making a comic book, it may as well be a good one. I may as well have a cover by Rob Willis. I may as well get Narwhal'S to do a short story for it. I may as well make all these trading cards and posters and all that stuff because I don't want it to be good for my first comic. I just want it to be a good comic. And looking back on book one, I think it is good, but I think I've learned a lot since then. So I think book two is going to be great. And then I think, of course, I'm young, so every book should be getting better and better and better. So hopefully by the end of the story, it's really really good. But even said, I think book one's really good, and I'm really thankful to everybody who backed it. And I really want to have it in your hands before the end of this year. Is the goal. I guess that kind of just depends on the printer and shaking my camera. The printer, and when I get that out to you guys, when he gets me my proofs and we get all that shipped out and printed and everything. But how can I turn it to have you guys? That's so weird. Those are back there. Back there, I have everybody's. Basically, all the contributions are back there. So I've got all the bags, boards, poster, cards, everything set up. I've got the Gemini mailer stacked up next to me. Literally just have to wait till the books get here, slide it in the thing, slap it in the Gemini mailer, ship it out. So everything's set up, ready to go. Just needs to actually show up. Yeah, a lot of scattered thoughts today, folks. But that's kind of what my live streams are. A lot of scattered thoughts. So again, check out the interactivity essay. Links in the description. Stay tuned for more updates on the comic book. If you are a pro and you have some wisdom for a young whippersnapper like me, please let me know. I'm always all ears to hear anything from anybody. Anything, that you can offer me would be great. Uh, I think that's all I got. I'm gonna head off, probably get some food or something. And I'll try to find the link for my fantasy story, put it in the description if you're interested. I think it's pretty good. Not to toot my own horn, but I was considered a pretty good writer, creative writer, essay writer, everything like that. Pretty well, won some awards. I it doesn't translate exactly to comic book writing because in like fantasy novel or something, you can write all flowery and you can write all these big words and all that stuff, to make it sound really good. But when you're writing a comic book, you're writing to the artist. And the artist doesn't care about any of that. He wants to know what it's supposed to look like. And so it's kind of a different skill set that I hope I'm improving at. But I'll see you guys in the next one, and stay tuned for more in the future. Goodbye.